Hey Meachum Village, it's Aneesa. Today, I want to talk to you about the truth about co-parenting. Now, I'm going to give you the bottom line first. The term co-parenting is simply a gentle way of saying broken home. So I'm going to be using co-parenting and broken home interchangeably. You know, my parents divorced when I was 14, and the term co-parenting simply didn't exist back then. They were divorced. We were a broken home. My parents lived in separate places. In my situation, we didn't have regular quote unquote visitation and mandated things. We saw my father. We spent time with him here and there, but definitely did not tap into what we know as co-parenting today. But I want to be clear. Co-parenting does not lessen the impact of divorce, separation, or not being married and having children together. It is just as devastating. It is just as impactful to not be together for your children, whether you call it co-parenting or not. So I'm going to be using the words co-parenting and broken home interchangeably. But what I want to make clear is that co-parenting means that the home is broken. And I know that's not popular opinion. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear if you either come from a situation where your parents co-parented or if you are currently in a co-parenting situation. But we need to be clear about this, especially as Christ followers, if our intention is to model our home and our families after God's original intent for family, okay? So I'm going to talk about three main things in terms of broken homes, also known as co-parenting. I'm going to talk about devastation, disparity, and deception. Let's start by looking at some statistics that I think are going to help frame what we're going to learn today. So research has documented that parental divorce or separation is associated with an increased risk for child and adolescent adjustment problems, including academic difficulties. So this looks like lower grades or even being a school dropout, disruptive behaviors, so conduct and substance abuse problems, things that might commonly show up as ADHD or ADD, or oppositional defiance. Also, mental health, so depression, anxiety. Now, I'll say this. I've been a public school educator for the last 20 years. I've served as a teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, network level. I've pretty much done it all, and I have seen everything you could possibly imagine. And I can almost guarantee you that when severe behavior issues or academic issues arose, 95% of the cases involved a child who was from a single parent home, or cases in which the child wanted to see dad. Typically it was fathers that were missing, unfortunately, wanted to see dad but couldn't see dad for some reason, or dad was supposed to pick me up or take me here or spend time with me and is inconsistent. Or another case that I have commonly seen over and over again is when students start to have issues and one of the parents would disclose to me that they were having a challenging time at home, meaning between the mother, father, husband, wife. And again, this is not necessarily exhaustive data. This is anecdotal data, but I've been doing this for a very long time, and it's not uncommon at all. Let's take a look at some more stats. So the 1910 census first showed Black children more likely than whites to come from broken homes. In the 1920s, sociologist E. Franklin Frazier was the first to show that Black children from broken homes tended to create broken homes. Also, co-parenting or coming from a broken home has the same impact now as it did then. We have not escaped this. There is a great blog post on our website, meachumvillage.org, called Does Divorce Hurt Children in the Long Run?, with a video by Pastor Alan Parr. And as an adult who came from a broken home, I can tell you that divorce does hurt in the long run. We definitely have felt the impacts of coming from a broken home. Even something like about a year ago, my father became very, very ill, and I came to his aid. I was the primary one to care for him and make all his arrangements and things of that nature, in which my mother, who is still living, by the way, and able-bodied and all of that, ideally, she would have been the one to care for her husband, to make his arrangements, while her children, me and my sister, support her in doing so. But because of the broken home situation, that burden fell on me. And that's just a small yet big impact of how a broken home impacts you in the long run. Also, when I first got married early on in our marriage, so Charles and I have been married for 19 years. When we were first married, I struggled a lot with selfishness. I put myself first because, again, another aspect of coming from a broken home is that you look out for number one, because your environment becomes unstable when your parents are not together, or when your parents suddenly separate, or when they divorce. And for kids, it seems sudden, right? Like the problems might have been going on for quite some time, but as a child, you're not fully in the know. And so it can definitely very well seem like, 1 week, mom and dad are together and they're there, and the next week, everything changes. And so I brought that selfishness, that mindset of looking out for number one into my marriage. And for years, we struggled because my husband grew up quite differently than I did. And so he came to the marriage with the attitude of service and sacrifice, and I did not. And so that caused us to bump heads quite a bit, often with him, having to pay the price. And so there's many impacts in terms of divorce, separation, co-parenting, broken home that can rise up for you as an adult. So let's get started with talking about devastation. Now, devastation in its simplest term is to overwhelm as with grief or dismay. And we would be misguided if we did not believe that divorce, separation, or an absent father or absent mother does not cause devastation to our children. And so again, no matter how you package it, whether we call it co-parenting or not, the fact of the matter is that my parents are not husband and wife. They are not together. We are not sharing space. We are not living in the same household, and that causes devastation. Let's look at this scripture, Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. So if you read a couple of verses above that, Jesus is talking about children. He's using children in this illustration. And when we break up our homes, we are causing devastation to children. We are harming children. And the Bible is clear. It's better for you to have a millstone around your neck than to harm one of God's children, okay? And so we have to face reality that when we are making choices to divorce, to separate, or to not marry the person that we have children with, we are bringing upon this devastation to children, but we're also quite possibly can be inflicting consequences upon ourselves. So again, going back to those stats, we're now we possibly are increasing our chances of dealing with delinquent children, dealing with children who suffer from depression and anxiety, dealing with children who later on become adults and can't have or form sustainable friendships and relationships because they fear rejection or abandonment. Those are all byproducts of a broken home. So the next one is disparity. And so the definition of disparity is lack of similarity or equality, inequality, or difference. You could think about this in terms of countries as well. So if you live in America, you know that living in America is very different than living in a third world country. And we would consider people in third world countries to be living in despair. So they do not have access to resources in the same way that we do if you live in America. It's not equitable. And so in a situation where you are co-parenting or where you are managing a broken home, you are bringing disparity upon your children. How? Well, your children do not get all of you, whether it's the best of you or the worst of you, 24/7, right? Your time is divided. So even in the best situations where we have visitation set up and, I get the kids one weekend, husband or estranged partner gets the kids the next weekend, or, they're with me for the summer, they're with him for the following summer, whatever these different setups are, again, it's not going to be the same. It's never going to equate living in the same household, sharing everyday life together, and being a part of pretty much, every moment. There are going to be missed moments. There's going to be increased friction because now I have to make sure that I'm communicating with another person and that we're aligned, where all of these things would naturally happen in your household. Another place we see this come up is if you have a situation where there's a broken home, so parents are not married, but one of the parents remarries and or has additional children that do not live with you, right? And so now if you are remarried or you have additional children and they're living full-time with you, and your children who do not live full-time with you are now visiting and now again coming on their set times to come, they're having a totally different experience than your live-in kids. And that's just the reality. Again, even in the best situation, it is not going to be equitable. And so we are causing lack of similarity or equality in our children's lives when we create a broken home. So Proverbs 11:1 says, "A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." Co-parenting or a broken home causes us to have a false balance. The weights will never be equal, even in the best situations. And I have to keep emphasizing that because there's school of thought out there that says, we'll have equal time, we'll have equal amount of holidays, we'll do every other summer, every other winter break, and things of that nature. It's still not ever going to be equal or balanced because the home is separated. The parents are separated and they're not united as a family in the way that God intended. So the next one is deception. And so deception is to mislead by a false appearance or statement, or to even be unfaithful to. When we create a broken home, and now with this new co-parenting, movement, we are actually creating a false sense of family as God designed for our children. And I'm speaking in particular to Christ followers, because as Christ followers, our heart's desire should be to have a family unit in the way that God intended. So a husband and a wife having children together, living together, training those children up, right? spending time together, embracing each other, working through conflict, all of those things. And so when we have a broken home and we say that we are co-parenting, what we are trying to do is create a sense of togetherness and a sense of family for our children without the biblical responsibility. And that is deception. Again, I know this is hard to hear, and this is not popular opinion. But if we are Christ followers, our goal should be to do family the way that God intended us to do family. Let's look at a scripture. Galatians 7:8. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. When we create a broken home and we initiate co-parenting, we are sowing into our flesh. Because divorce is not biblical unless infidelity is involved or unless an unbelieving spouse chooses to leave. We're clear on that, okay? So in most cases, when we are divorcing, or again, if we don't even get married in the first place, we're violating God's biblical standard and definition for marriage. And if you are a Christ follower, that's just not acceptable. Now, another thing that plays into deception that I've seen is we're going to end the marriage, but now we want a happy divorce. So now we're going to work on our communication for the children. We're going to be aligned for the children. We're going to be cordial and respectful for the children. We're going to maybe even spend time together with the children. And we have that backwards. If you could do that on the back end, you can put in the work to do that on the front end. And that's what we have to really be serious about. So again, devastation, disparity, and deception. Now, you might be in a couple of different categories here. You might be on the brink of divorce. You might be separated, but not yet divorced. So that would be on the brink of divorce. You might be divorced. You might also have never married, but you share children with someone and you all have decided to co-parent, and maybe you have the intent to get married, maybe you don't intend to get married. So I want to first talk to the people who have children with someone that they're not married to. It would be my hope, especially if you are a Christ follower, that you intend to marry the person that you have children with. If that is your goal, if that's what you would like to do, then I encourage you to seek out counseling and support immediately so that you can go toward the direction of creating a family unit in the way that God intended, and you can get in front of different issues or differences or whatever has been preventing you from getting married. If you are not married to your child's mother or father and you have no intention of marrying them, then absolutely your goal and your focus should be doing what is best for the children. So don't mistake this lesson for saying that you shouldn't do what's best for your children. You shouldn't come together and communicate and be aligned. I understand that. And yes, that should be the goal, to do what's best for your children at the end of the day. But we want to get to a place where we intend to marry, or we don't divorce or separate in the first place. So now, if you are someone who might be considering divorce or separation, I really want to encourage you to get the help that you need and answer this question. Have you really done everything you can do to salvage your marriage? Have you changed? Have you examined your personality flaws and made a conscious effort to do something different? Have you sought out sound biblical counsel from a pastor, a trusted friend, or a professional? Have you searched the scriptures for a solution to the issues that you and your spouse currently have? Have you asked another successful, godly couple to hold you accountable, to walk with you? Have you fasted? Have you prayed? Have you made a decision that divorce is not an option? And these are hard questions to answer, especially when emotions are involved, when you're frustrated, when you're tired, and when you really believe that you would be better by yourself at this point. I understand that. But again, God can do it. God can help you salvage your marriage if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to put in the time and the sacrifice. Hopefully, this lesson encouraged you and it helped you. Please feel free to leave comments, like, subscribe. Is there a particular issue or situation that you're dealing with that we can help with? Drop it in the comments. Reach out. Send us an email. Visit our website, meachumvillage.org. Break the Cycle book that you see right here is an amazing resource that helps women deal with patterns and mindsets around being raised by a single mother. There's also nuggets in this book that will help you avoid the broken home cycle. It's a must read if you are currently married and thinking about divorce. It's a must read if you are not married but you want to be married someday. Also, our conversation cards, which you see right there. Our conversation cards are also another amazing resource to help you have conversations about faith and family. And I think that these cards would be helpful for people that are currently having some issues and want to get to the bottom of some things, but especially helpful for you if you're considering marriage and you haven't made that step yet. It'll help you identify a man of God, a woman of God, and avoid some of these pitfalls that can lead to a broken home. I hope you enjoyed this message. I know it wasn't an easy one, but I promise if you listen and heed to the wisdom offered, it will bless you. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, what God has joined together, let no one separate.